Hey guys, I'm continuing the story from last Friday, so stay tuned. Hey, what's up guys? It's Hafsa Slayman and you're listening to Confessions of a Doctorholic. And I left yous at a cliffhanger last weekend because I didn't want a super long episode, so here goes. Oslo calls me out of the library. And there I am going like, WTF, why would you, I haven't spoken to you, why are you calling me out of the library? But the curiosity got the better of me. So I step out and there's Oslo, Tokyo, and Berlin. And Berlin starts shouting at me. I have never been shouted at in the past, especially not by colleagues. But no one's ever had a reason to shout at me or belittle me. So Berlin starts shouting at me. He wasn't shouting profanities, no. He was just saying, why are you gossiping about me? Why are you talking shit? Etc., etc., etc. So I guess that was a profanity. So I was there stunned because it felt like 3 against 1 and I've got no idea what happened. I did not speak about these 3. I genuinely didn't do anything because I was just I was trying to move on. It wasn't a pleasant experience and I was trying to move on from this whole incident. But then at the same time, there was a part of me that was I was bullied in the past. I do not want anyone to make me feel little. I do not want anyone to get away with something, and especially if it's something that I didn't do. Why should I be afraid? I have done nothing wrong and I was the one that was the victim and not them. So Berlin was leading the squad, but I was absolutely not. I am putting this person in his place because this is absolutely not acceptable. So I literally burst out. I had a massive adrenaline rush. I wasn't even thinking. And to be honest, I literally said, calm the fuck down. I'm sorry for putting profanities on the show, but literally I was not thinking. It was inappropriate to use the word, but I freaked out and I literally he would not let me speak. I couldn't put a word in. And so he looks at me, he's absolutely stunned. And I was assertive. I'm not really a shouter. I never shout at people. I was assertive because I was I am not carrying down, especially if I haven't done something wrong. If I've done something wrong, I can apologize and let it go. Anyway, so Berlin goes why are you saying X, Y, and Z? Why are you saying that the head of the emergency department is saying that we said this, and that? Where did you hear it from? And then I was she told me. She told me herself. And Berlin goes oh, okay. He doesn't even apologize, right? He says, when a blogger like you goes out of line, it's my job to put you in your place. I was literally I'm looking at him what has my blog / Instagram have to do with anything? And why is it his job to put me in my place? But my mum was I don't even remember what she told me to say, but she was you should have said something back. But literally, imagine someone saying that to you. I was stunned. Then Oslo says, and by the way, for the longest time, I thought Oslo was cute. So that showed me heaps because even if someone's attractive, personality plays a huge role. And I did not like the role that Oslo played in this matter. Even if they were best friends, I would like to think that if my best friend has wronged someone, if it was a 3 versus 1 situation, I would have handled it differently. And I'll tell you in a second how I would have handled it. Anyway, Oslo turns to me and he's he was trying to break up the fight. And he was listen, this is not how we wanted this to end. He kept using the term we. We just wanted to chat. We just wanted to clear the air. And in my head, I'm oh my God, if your classmates targeted you, that means you know that what you did was wrong. That means you know that you bullied a student in the year below. And that's why you're apologizing. And I know that sounds awful, but that's how it felt because they didn't think of apologizing before. And it was still an argument when I first walked out. It wasn't, I'm sorry we made you feel that way. No, it was just an argument. And then they were this is not how we wanted it to pan out. And I was okay, cool. Anyway, there were 2 people in the library. So one of them was Rio and one of his mates as well. What disappointed me in them is that they knew it was a 3 versus 1 scenario and they just kind of stayed out. And once again, I would like to think if I were in that situation, if I were in the library hearing this entire thing go, and I know they heard it because they walk out and they're hey, are you right? And I'm yeah, I'm fine. I'm stronger than I look. And I was shaking afterwards, but I had to brush it off. Shit happens. So I would like to think if I were in the library, I would stand up and I would say, this is completely inappropriate for you to like argue in this scenario, because this is a library that's associated with the hospital. So essentially when we walked out, we were in the hospital corridor. So I wish someone stood out and went like, okay, I'm here to mediate. What are you arguing about? This is completely unprofessional, or something like that. You know, I did feel alone. None of my mates were around. I was studying. I wasn't doing anything wrong. When I said earlier, I wouldn't have handled it like this. I would have texted the person rather than ambush the person when they were least expecting it. I would have said, hey, I've heard a few things. Is it okay if we clear the air? And maybe like if I don't get a response, text back and say that. And instead of like going like 3 versus 1, maybe organizing it like 1 by 1 to see what the thing is. That's how I would have liked to handle it, because I felt ambushed. Anyway, because I got everything off of my chest, and like the weirdest thing that happened was that Berlin at the end of it was like, hey, why'd you go off of Instagram? And like in my head, I'm like, none of your business. But then I was like, okay, we cleared the air. There's no reason for me to be frosty. And I said, oh, like I'm just studying for an exam. I failed my first practice test. So that's why I'm like, I just can't juggle Instagram and so many different things. So that's why I deactivated it. And Oslo's like, okay, cool, good luck. I felt like the anvil that was on my chest has been lifted. So that day, I haven't bumped into them in ages. And that day, I bumped into them 3 more times. It was so awkward, but I let it brush off because I was like, I did nothing wrong. I saw them coming back from the emergency department. There's a big part of me that overthinks, and that overthinking part was like, oh, they went back to the emergency physician. But then once again, I was like, well, I did not do anything wrong. So if they go to her and they clear the air with her, then that's absolutely fine. I did nothing wrong. She was the one that pointed out to them, and it shouldn't have ended up like that, but I genuinely didn't lie. So after that incident, I reckon I saw Tokyo and I saw Berlin in one incident. I said hello, I was polite, hello, how are ya? Legged it. And in another instant, I saw, while I was getting vaccinated actually, I saw Oslo and Berlin, and they seemed super angry. It wasn't directed at me, but I was like, okay, cool, whatever. They legged it. Now, fast forward 4 months later, here I am thinking, situation's been dealt with. My best friends were super proud of me. They were like, great, we're proud of you for standing up for yourself. I get a message from Berlin on WhatsApp. Now, I feel like WhatsApp is quite personal. So the only people I've got on WhatsApp are really close friends and my close family members. And I usually like communicating with people on the gram. So I found it really odd. And the first thing that came to my mind was, how did Berlin get my number? Anyway, so Berlin was like, hey, how are you going? And I wasn't in the same hospital at this time. I was on my psychiatry placement. So I was like, fine, how are you? You know, being polite. And so Berlin cuts the crap and goes like, well, I decided to talk to you about what went down in the emergency department. And in my head, I'm like, I thought we dealt with this. What is going on? So I just see on top, typing. And I was like, oh my God, 4 months have passed. I've actually forgotten about this. And you just reminded me. So I was so annoyed. And Berlin goes like, well, I've heard that you went around and you told your mates in Chicago. And I'm just sitting there going like, I told my best friend that is not in this program. And I was just like, my best mate has nothing to do with that. She's on an alpaca farm. She gives 0 shits about medical school. I didn't say that to him though, because he didn't need to know that. He was just like, so basically that I went around and told people at a different campus than us. I did not. So I found that extremely interesting. And I was kind of like, well, like when he was saying that, I was like, there were so many people that knew about that. Like the first time he was hell-bent that I stuffed up, and then this time he was also hell-bent that I stuffed up. And I really don't like arguing with people that are like that, because it's not a question anymore. It's not a question of like, hey, let's clear the air. Like, what happened that night? Why are we arguing? Here, it's more like, you are guilty and I just want you to admit that you are guilty. And I also found it sus that he was typing, but I just felt like maybe he wanted to screenshot the conversation. Berlin keeps chatting and he was like, the whole thing is wrong. You were putting patients at risk. And I'm just sitting there going like, I am putting PPE on. I am not interacting with patients. I'm looking at the blood results and the x-rays. I was being completely polite. I took permission to be there and I was listening to everyone's warnings, the emergency physician, the nurses. I am a rule follower, and especially in the pandemic, I wanted to learn. I want to become a better doctor. So for him to say that, I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous, but I didn't want to argue because I just felt like there's no point arguing with Berlin. So instead of leaving me alone, I wasn't replying because I just felt like it was a lost cause. So I wasn't replying. I just see typing. He just would not stop. So I ended up replying saying, I thought we dealt with this months ago. Good luck with your life. Berlin replies, well, why are people saying Hafsa said X, Hafsa said Y? And honestly, this is not a very mature part of me, but I just replied back with a thumbs up because I was like, I've had enough. And then I blocked him afterwards. So I want to get some advice from all of yous. So I enjoy reflecting on my experiences because it helps me become a better person. I felt, especially before that whole fallout that happened outside the library, I felt like I was being targeted. I felt like they were gossiping about me. And I also felt little, which, I am short and I've got like kebab fingers and whatever, but I didn't like how small they made me feel and I didn't like how I felt defenseless and scared. So I did like it when we cleared the air. However, I wished I did it earlier. So my question to all of you is, do you reckon that things would not have played out like this if I confronted Berlin earlier? A. And B, after the first confrontation, do you reckon I should have involved the school in it? Now hear me out, right? I did not involve the school because I didn't warn Berlin that I was going to involve the school, and part of me also wanted him to graduate. Because I knew because of the pandemic, the final years from last year, they have dealt with so much, with placements cancelling in their most important year, with the inability to do electives overseas because of that. And there were so many things that have changed because of the pandemic. And so many placements went online, which has affected the way we learn. So I didn't want to put them through any more stress. And I just felt like I shouldn't have been that nice person about it. So I reckon I should have involved the school earlier. So my question to all of you is my reflection accurate? What would you have done in my situation? And also, for those of you listening to this who have, for whatever reason, made someone feel uncomfortable, I want you to think very carefully about your actions. It is hurtful. And think about your actions when you're texting people on social media. It might be something that you kind of think, it's not so bad, but actually think twice before you text. If you're upset, do not text people because it can really hurt the other person on the other end of the line. And with that, I will catch yous next time.